All right, we're live.
Good morning, and welcome to our Queensborough President hybrid land use public hearing. This hearing is taking place both in person in our conference room and on our YouTube channel at queensbp.nyc.gov. I am Lisa Atkins. I am the Director of Housing for Queensborough President Donovan Richards, and I will be chairing this hearing on his behalf. For those of you who wish to testify virtually and haven't already pre-registered to do so, please visit our website at queensbp.nyc.gov. If you are attending our public hearing in person, please see our staff to sign up for public speaking. And if you are not already done so, please note your opportunity to speak will follow those who are pre-registered. Written testimony is welcome from those who are unable to testify in real time. All written testimony must be received by 5 p.m. today and may be submitted via email to planning2@queensbp.nyc.gov or by conventional mail sent to the Office of Queensborough President at 120-55 Queens Boulevard, room 226, Kew Gardens, New York, 11424. I will now open the application. But first, the housekeeping rules. The following manner will be the conduction of today's hearing. The applicant will be called to give a description of the zoning action requested, an explanation of the proposed project, and respond to any questions from the chair. The floor will then be open for public speakers. Please listen for your name to be called. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. A signal will be heard and notice displayed on Zoom after your 3 minutes have passed. When you are called, please identify yourself for the record and if you are formally speaking as a representative or member of a group, the calendar item or number of the application you are speaking about, and whether you are for or against the item. Then you may begin your testimony. At the discretion of the chair, if there are a large number of speakers on any particular item, it may be put on second call. Speakers for and against that item may also be called on an alternating basis. Please note, if you are testifying virtually, you must keep your camera on during the testimony and display your name accurately on Zoom. If at any point you have any technical issues, please let our planning staff know in the chat and we will assist you. Calendar item numbers 1 and 2 are related items. ULURP number 240250ZMQ and ULURP N240251ZRQ. The applicant is Eric Palatnik, PC, affected community board number 6. Applicant, please begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Eric Palatnik. I am here representing 102-51 Queens Boulevard. And we're here today to ask you for a zoning map change. And with us is our project architect Tahir. And I think you'll agree, hopefully, after you see the proposed design, that Tahir has done a spectacular job with the proposal. And we'd like to present it to you right now. Okay. So the proposal is on your screen right now. You can see the proposed building. As I'm going to be talking, there are certain features of the building, of the design, and of the community board's requests that I'm going to be putting into my presentation, but I'd like to call them out for you ahead of time, what we are doing. We're asking for a zoning change on a portion of Queens Boulevard between 68th Avenue and 68th Road. It's a portion that curves as you're heading westerly towards Manhattan. It's been underdeveloped since I was a child. It is a 1-story taxpayer building that has a series of local retail uses within it, and set behind it on the back streets, on the side streets, in contrary to most good zoning and planning, are larger, taller buildings, 6-story buildings. These 6-story buildings, particularly the ones at the end, adjacent to Queens Boulevard, adjacent to this property, have enjoyed the benefit for years of being next to a site that was substantially underdeveloped. And the reason the site was underdeveloped was not unique to this site. It's endemic to Queens Boulevard. While the grand thoroughfares of New York City have developed over the decades, Queens Boulevard has languished in the past. Very few new buildings have been developed, and most of the new buildings that have been constructed have done so as the result of a rezoning such as this. Most recently, 9881 Queens Boulevard, which I had the pleasure of representing, and which was before your Madam Borough, the Borough President's office before. Similar situation. This application is responsive to design of the community, and I'd also like to address some of the concerns of the community that they made in their community board recommendation throughout this. One of the community board recommendations was that the property should give up the parking that we are proposing, and I'll show you that in a second, and that it should be replaced with affordable housing. That cannot be achieved because, as I'm going to show you in this presentation, this building is built out to the maximum FAR, even with the parking. If we took the parking out, all that would happen was the building would get shorter. But there cannot be a replacement of parking for any further floor area. We are maxed out on a full floor area. Additionally, parking is much needed in the neighborhood. The census tract shows that, as well as car ownership rates show that, as well as discussions with people in the community. And the final thing is we were asked to provide a carve out for 15% supportive housing on the property. That is impossible, and we urge the Borough President's office not to adopt that recommendation. The reason for that is including any sort of supportive housing in a development is a development unto itself. It requires funding to be issued by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. That funding is based upon an application process, a rigorous application process, which our office was very much involved in most recently at the Parkway Hospital site, where supportive housing was created in tandem with a new development in an entirely separate building in the former Parkway Hospital building. And on the parking lot, a new residential market rate building was built. But it cannot be done here. And we urge the Borough President's office to review that recommendation and consider the statements we just made. We have submitted all of these responses in writing, and with that, I will continue on with the application, and I will reference these points as needed. The development right here is shown as I just described to you on the right-hand side. It's a 17-story building. It'll have 184,000 square feet of floor area, 216 units, 54 of which will be affordable. The left-hand side shows you what's there right now. R71 zoning. R71 zoning provides zero affordable housing out of it. Not just that, R71 does not allow any economic return on the development. If it did, you would see developers around Queens Boulevard developing in the abundant R71 zoning. But the condition I'm showing you here on our property in the lower left corner is all along Queens Boulevard, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Behind the property is a 6-story residential building. That building, you'll see the lower right corner of the proposal here, picture shows you how we've designed our building to meet the height exactly at the lower base level of that brick residential building behind us, thereby maintaining the character of the area, consistent with what could be constructed today under the R71 zoning. So we're not doing anything to that brick building that's behind us other than building what theoretically is allowed to be built, at least to an R71. A building was going to be built at some point in time, is my point. This is the proposed rezoning. The proposed rezoning on the left, zoning district is on the left, R71, R8X is on the right. It's maintaining a commercial overlay, albeit changing it to a C24. We gave a scenario here for what could be built right now as of right. City of Yes does not change everything so much other than, as I mentioned a moment ago, eliminate the parking requirement. The top is what could be built right now. This is what I was mentioning with the apartment building to our right. If you look, they will be boxed in by whatever gets built there, as the top screen shows you. You'll see in your recommendation that there was a request in the community board's recommendation that there's a request that that be adjusted somehow to accommodate people behind us. It's very difficult to do so, and you'll see the design though that we've created does carve out a donut in the middle that lowers the building height to just 1 or 2 stories in the middle. So that 6 story up against the apartment buildings on the right is just at the street. In the middle, it's much lower, and you can see that in further presentations I'm making, as well as here in the lower right, in the lower picture where it says outdoor amenity space. That is the 2 story portion I'm talking about that goes up against the donut of the buildings behind us. So I wanted to call that out because that is one of the comments of the community board. You can see here also on the lower right, 54 affordable units. It's a substantial amount of affordable units for an area of Queens that has seen very little affordable housing be created, absent what's been accommodated through rezonings. This pretty much just summarizes everything I just said, so I'm going to skip right past it. This shows you the site. It's again, if you, I should told you before about the buildings behind us. You can see there are trees on those properties. Those trees are not being disturbed. That's not our property. There is a buffer between the buildings, and those windows that they have are not going to be sealed up. There will be separation between them. If you look more importantly, or equally as important in this slide, the condition along Queens Boulevard, which in my opinion, from somebody who's been loving New York City for my entire life, lived in Queens, has driven this strip my entire life, it's unimaginable to me that the greatest city in the world has 1 story buildings on the greatest boulevard in the world. And the 1 story buildings have been there since before I was born. And that's a shame in a city that has a housing crisis. It's a direct result of the R71 zoning. It does not work. If it worked, every single person in the community that loved the community and had the ability to invest in it, including the property owners all along Queens Boulevard, would have done so already, including this property owner. It just does not work. So the rezoning we're proposing to you is what's necessary in order to create an incentive for a developer to actually build housing. And the proof of that is in the pudding. Just look at Queens Boulevard and how it's been our entire lives. And this is the building. The building is stunning. Tahir did, I think, a nice job, better than nice. I think he did a beautiful job. The curvature, the angles of the building that you're seeing, you can't really appreciate in these images because they don't reflect the curvature of Queens Boulevard at this location, nor do they depict really clearly the change in topography and angles and elevations of the roadways and the heights of the buildings around us, as he's taken it into account in his design. So as you see the building steps as in the lower picture, you really see it as you're heading west towards Manhattan. See the building goes in sections almost. Those sections are mimicking the curvature of the roadway. So it's not just a linear design. It's almost a 3-dimensional design that's mimicking the 3-dimensional nature of what's going on around us. Down at the street level, the white portion of the building is mimicking the heights of the adjacent residential buildings behind us. So when you're walking down the street perspective is going to be very similar to what's on the side streets. The tower itself will be set back, and you'll really have to crane your neck to catch a glimpse of it. And I think that was done intentionally, and I think he did a beautiful job. The floor area is very straightforward. You'll see here, ground floor, 17,000 square feet of ground floor. Parking. The parking, you see here, the parking is in yellow. It's represented the cream color. The parking is at the second floor in the basement. None of that parking counts towards the floor area. So if we took that out, the community board said, take that out, put affordable housing in there. That would not work. Because if you took that out, there's no more floor area. It's exempt from floor area because the parking is below the height of 23 feet. And there's a rule that says parking below the height of 23 feet doesn't count towards floor area. Now, as far as parking in general goes, we need the parking. The people in Forest Hills and Kew Gardens drive. They're young families, and they're people coming out of empty nesters, coming out of larger homes. And most of them, from our experience, like the ability and the testimony we heard and the brokers we've spoken to and our real life experience with 9881 Queens Boulevard, which just leased up recently or is starting leasing up, shows that people have families and they like the rest of us, to escape the city on the weekend, and they don't do it in an Uber or a Bolt. They like to have a car downstairs. So that's why we're asking for the parking. Proposed height of the building, which is our zoning action. And this slide is really stunning for showing you what I was describing a few moments ago. Very, 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 very few buildings on Queens Boulevard have been built in the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. And most of these buildings that you're staring at were built when my grandmother and grandfather dominated Queens Boulevard with their friends, playing rum and ginny Q up and down in all those apartments. Nowadays, there have been some taller apartment buildings built, just a smattering of them. Our height is 175 feet. I think this slide speaks for itself. We're actually one of the smaller buildings of the taller buildings that have been built on Queens Boulevard. Most everything else, we're the lower end of it if you average these out. A couple are at 153, 115, but there's plenty that are 225, 224, 249, 176, 179, 235, 176, excuse me, 235, 273. So there's very tall buildings on Queens Boulevard, as there should be. All these businesses that are there are going to be invited to come back into the property. The community expressed concerns about trash, things like that. It's all going to be accommodated within the building. Uh, Obviously, we're close to subways. I'm speaking to the Queensborough president. I'm not going to talk to you about how great your transit is on Queens Boulevard. I am going to talk to you, though, about the affordability matrix. Uh, we are providing a substantial amount of affordable housing to this proposed development, and it's much needed in the neighborhood. As you can see, 56% of the population is non-white. 47%, that's leading into 47% are foreign-born population, with 22% limited English. You know this. The increase in housing units on the top right, 3.1% have been created, while the population has gone up by 7% nearly. Meanwhile, the rest of the city has increased housing by 8%. So the rest of the city is going up by 8%, and this area is going up by 3% in housing production. It's dramatically low amount of affordable housing that's being provided. That's what all these charts are showing you. So we're hoping that you see that, and you see that this is a good justification for providing the affordable housing. Here you can see Community Board 6 in particular. They have 271 affordable housing units created in this generation, not including rent stabilized apartments that were created when my grandparents roamed Queens Boulevard. Just in our adult lifetime, we have created a grand total of 271 to date. If this was approved, that number is so low that one building can knock that percentage up by 20%. So obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. The rents that are being achieved here we're coming in the gate at AMI option level 1. It's the exact same proposal that was set forth for the project at 9881 Queens Boulevard. It's economically viable as is. Again, we're asking you not to add or adopt the language of the community board. And we're asking you to separate that out with respect to supportive housing. We do not have the ability to provide it. We are coming in at 60% AMI. We are providing a substantial amount of affordable housing, and we're working with 32 BJ right now, and we hope to have a union contract in place with 32 BJ. So we're doing as much as we can to be a responsible developers. You can see the rents here. I'm not going to recite them for you. You know what they are. You've seen them before, but 54 units at option level 1, I think is a substantial benefit to the community. And this just gives you the breakdown of the units. They're not all the crummy apartments. There's some studios. There are some 1 bedrooms, excuse me. There are some 2 bedrooms. There are some 3 bedrooms. So the studios are we finding very, 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 very attractive to empty nesters, widows, and widowers. We find that even more so in the affordable apartment realm, getting applications, our clients are seeing applications from people over 55, over 60 that are in dire need of affordable housing and love a studio because they don't have much stuff and they're the cheapest things out there and they can afford it on a fixed income. So and you have a lot of seniors in the community, a lot of seniors without housing. Uh, you can see here the sustainability features are as everything a modern day building you think would have. Uh, and we can talk about that if you want. I mentioned a few moments ago, 9881 Queens Boulevard. This is the exact same proposal. Again, we are asking you not to adopt the community board's recommendation and add more stringent requirements onto it, which are unachievable, and will cause much havoc economically with the development, but rather act in accordance with 9881, which, as you drive down Queens Boulevard right now, is up in the air, will have affordable housing, and is one of only two buildings that you will see constructed between the Borough President's office and the Long Island Expressway on Queens Boulevard in the last decade. So I think it's good to see this happening and more people wanting to do it. We're just hopeful that you're recognizing the conditions that were suggested were not really viable for development. Uh, the plans, I'm not going to spend much time going through the plans other than to point out this top picture. And I'm going to stop right here after my discussion right here and open this up for any questions you may have. Again, speaking to the community board's comment in their recommendation about the facade of the rear of our building, the right image here shows you, albeit in block form, the facade of our rear of our building. And you can see what I mentioned a moment ago. There is substantial distance between their buildings and ours. We are not blocking their windows. Not just that, we are matching their height. And the height that we're at with them is analogous to what could be constructed today under current zoning. So if this application is struck down or anything with that respect, as of right development could be constructed the same height. And on the final note, if you look in the middle, the building drops down to 2 stories. You could just catch a glimpse of it right when you look through the donut. And that condition to here could tell you more about it, but it pretty much extends about 20 feet back, from 20 to 35 feet back as the building itself steps back. So we're hoping that each of these measures, in your keen eyes, will see that the application it was well supported at the community board. The conditions that they imposed on it are not any condition that we would like to see go forward. But we're hoping that you could see a way to accommodate that request. We thank you very much for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Palatnik. Will the existing businesses have the option to relocate within the new proposed development? And if not, where are they planning to go?
They are all welcome to come back into the development. Every single person has been spoken to. Every single person has been given the option. I think the only people that are not taking them up on it are the bank. The bank is a corporation, and the bank is going to go elsewhere. But everybody else is deciding right now. They've all been given temporary relocation assistance options. They're happy to help them do so, and it's an amicable relationship with everybody.
Okay. Tell me about your WMBE hiring goals.
We will be hiring in accordance with both the 485X program, as well as we know the requirements and the conditions of the board of the Borough President's office. We will be having a portion of the workforce be MWBE. That's also enforced by 32BJ in the work that they'll be doing, and they'll be a part of the applicant process, as I said.
Okay. Can you just walk me through the Community Board 6's recommendations for this application, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As I mentioned a moment ago and throughout the process, throughout the application discussion, Community Board 6 requested that we reduce the amount of parking to provide affordable housing. As I mentioned throughout the presentation, we will have 87 parking spaces. All of those 87 parking spaces are in a portion of space within the building that was not counted towards floor area. So eliminating the parking as they asked cannot physically create more affordable housing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have 87 parking spaces proposed for 216 units. According to latest data that we've reviewed, as I mentioned earlier, car ownership in the transit accessible areas of the Borough of Queens range from 30 to 40%. Therefore, the provision of 40% parking within the building is consistent with existing behavioral patterns of people that live in the community. So we're not reducing the size of the building. We're not able to provide more affordable housing by limiting the parking. And we're providing an amenity that most people coming into the building, or portion of the people coming into the building, are going to use and want. It will not sit empty. That was their first request. The second request was that they asked us to modify the rear facade of the building to provide more visual appeal and to increase the setback distances along the rear property line. That's the image I have up on the screen in front of you right now. As I suggested a moment ago, the height of that building at the rear property line and its location is allowable under current day zoning. The reason that condition was put in there is people that live next door were upset about a building being built there, and I understand that. But they've also benefited for decades, probably for 80 years, from the underdeveloped nature of the lot next door. We could build to this exact height at the rear portion that we are now. Not just that, we believe that the design that we've created is empathetic to them. You could see the building steps away from them. It's only at its furthest point right up against the street if you look at the right-hand side here. The second tier steps back. The third tier steps back. Below that, it's resting on a podium. It's 2 stories tall. And that's what I showed you in the elevation before. So most of the people are not even going to be up against a wall at all or near a wall. But some people will. But that's the condition that's been there, unfortunately, waiting to happen for decades. And they've just benefited. The same way if you look behind the building, there's building after building after building in the picture behind the building on all of them that have buildings next door. It's just the way it is in New York City, and we understand the concern, and we've done a beautiful job designing it. And I think if you'd like to see something different on the facade treatment, that's fine. But I think somebody's going to be hard pressed to find a nicer design facade treatment than what Tahir put together. Now, the final thing that was asked for was a carve out for 15% supportive housing units in the building. It's impossible to do that. And we're asking you to strike that and not adopt it as a part of your resolution, most important of all the conditions that they put in. And the reason why is because it's unachievable with the affordable housing programs available and the government funding subsidies that are necessary to operate to create a small portion of a market rate building to provide supportive housing units, which will then have a supportive housing population, which will then require subsidy to support that, and will then require supportive service space on site, all of which will substantially infringe upon any chance of any economic viability of the building, not to mention the fact that HPD will never fund a portion of a market rate building for supportive housing. Buildings that get approved for supportive housing are buildings similar to what's being done, as I mentioned a moment ago, at Parkway Hospital, where a large building of substantial size with cost efficiencies in construction and operation for years and years and years could be done at a cost that is viable and can allow the building to operate for decades into the future in a self-sustaining manner. And that's why Parkway Hospital is being done that way. And that's why you see other buildings being created that way. This building is not the building for that to happen in. And we would hope that you would agree. That's my answer.
Okay. Can you highlight any and all of your sustainability measures within the proposed development?
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of them, and Tahir really went out of his way to accommodate a lot of different things. The building will be solar ready. It'll have Energy Star appliances. It'll have electric vehicle charging. It'll have high efficiency heating and cooling, as well as low flow plumbing fixtures. It'll also have bioswales, capture rainwater in the street, as well as a rainwater detention system on the roof, where there'll be a green roof and plantings put in that will be both decorative and nice to look at, but will serve the other purpose of capturing rainwater, both for the use by the plant life, as well as then to be slowly dispersed into a drainage system. thereby mitigating any impact or as much of an impact as it can on the borough's streets. Sewer system. The building will be built electric in accordance with the new regulations, and that's all I can tell you. That's everything we got.
Approximately how many charging stations are you providing?
His 87 units will be providing approximately 10% of those will be charging stations with the ability, the system that's being installed has the ability, much like your home does, to add more outlets to it if needed. So it can handle the capacity to it. We're going to see how many people use it, and then we'll add more as we need. Each unit, believe it or not, is incredibly expensive. It is a very expensive device and charging unit. So we'll put them in. We'll see how they're utilized. If we see there's a demand, we'll install more.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation. We'll move on to public speakers. Do we have any registered public speakers?
We have no registered public speakers.
No speakers? Did you wish to speak?
No, no.
Okay.
Why I'm written.
All right. Thank you very much. And with that, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to close this hearing at this point. Again, if anyone wishes to comment or submit, they may do so via email or conventional mail by 5 p.m. today. And with that, I will close the hearing. Our next hybrid land use public hearing will be Thursday, January 9th, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. And to all, a happy holiday season. Thank you for your time and your patience. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.